Good afternoon, everybody. Yeah, my name is Liong Choon, and today with my colleague Chang, we'll be giving a talk on digital product delivery when the rubber meets the road. Yeah. So the talk will be in two parts. I'll be covering the first part, and Tzann will be covering the second part. So the first part will be on what does actually a product manager do, right? And how do they start? Where do they start? Yeah. Okay, before we begin, I understand that it's now lunch or past lunch hour, so it's kind of tired for some people who have been around since morning. I'm going to just maybe start off with some light-hearted stuff, yeah, for a couple of minutes. Okay, I'm sure you all have been experiencing the pandemic for over 7 months now, right? Yeah. So there are a lot of interesting snippets of reflections that has been what I call created over the months as we what I call try to survive the pandemic. And one of those very interesting one that I saw was this that what I call came up, right? It says that there's no way we can shut down everything in order to lower emissions, slow climate change, and protect the environment. Now, if you'll be in 2019, right, you'll be like me, right? This is common sense, isn't it, right? But things are now so different, right? So guess what's the Mother Nature's response? Here's a virus, practice, right? And we have been practicing for the last 7 months. For me, in my case, we have to start to learn new things, deliver courses in the e-learning way, the virtual way. We have to start to work from home. And for me, I have to start to what I call jostle for places on my dinner table with my kids who are also working from home. And sometimes for small non-critical meeting, I have to sit on my son's bed just to fight for the meeting room, right? Yeah, so there's actually a little video, and I find very interesting also. And this video is a little clip of a very iconic movie, right? For those who are movie buff, right? You may have what I call seen it before. And it has a lot of resonance, right? This clip has a lot of resonance with the current situation that we are facing with. So I'm going to just share with you last couple of minutes just to relax, right? Before we start the heavy stuff, yeah?
I'd like to share a revelation that I've had during my time here. It came to me when I tried to classify your species. I realized that you're not actually mammals. Every mammal on this planet instinctively develops a natural equilibrium with the surrounding environment, but you humans do not. You move to an area and you multiply and multiply until every natural resource is consumed. And the only way you can survive is to spread to another area. There is another organism on this planet that follows the same pattern. Do you know what it is? A virus. Human beings are a disease, a cancer of this planet. You are a plague, and we are the cure.
Okay, I hope you enjoyed that clip. Okay, so this is actually a clip from the movie The Matrix, right? Yeah. And given the situation we have today, right, the bad guy is actually sounding like a good guy, isn't it? We are all guilty of the kind of so-called environmental damage our lifestyle has created. Okay, let's start off with the serious stuff, right? So now when we did a little scan of the various job portal recently, just about last month, and to find out exactly what does digital product manager actually do, right? So this is actually a sample. Now, I'm not expecting you to read them. What I want you to focus on is the numbers there. There are actually 18 responsibilities listed. Imagine trying to publish this, right, in a traditional newspaper advertisement. You would have to spend a lot of money and what I call on it and effort on it, right? Now, it sounds even like more like a CEO role, isn't it? 18 of responsibilities, statements being listed. It may make people like you and me, like jaw drop. Yeah? But don't panic if you're aspiring to be a digital product manager. What you have inside there is really a lot of times the roles and responsibilities is about working with various specialist teams, right? For example, working with designers, UX designers, software engineers, software designers, working with business owner, working with engineering, and working with product marketing as well, working with various other stakeholders, internal stakeholders. Yeah. So let's talk about where do we start, right? So if you are being what I call thrust into the role of a product manager, and you're finding yourself getting lost, right? So this is what we would what I call offer a 4-step guide. Yeah. So the first step is first thing, right? Remember the saying, right? If you fail to plan, you plan to fail, right? So for a product manager, the first important plan that he needs to look at is his product roadmap. This is whereby he has to assess, right, whether his roadmap has all the right ingredients and prepare him well for the next stage ahead, right? Now, if that is okay, then he can go on to the next step. Now, remember, digital product delivery is a team game. As mentioned earlier, you have to work across many specialist teams, designers, marketers, sales, engineering, right? So you have to work across all your stakeholders and enable them to collaborate and to co-create. Now, step 3 is about thinking agile, right? You need to work in short cycles and work incrementally. All your customers are now fitted to a device called a mobile phone, a smartphone, right? So you have to make sure you have the ingredients to actually capture their attention, and you have to do it fast. That's why speed is now a feature. Now, then the last step will be to continuously monitor and iterate and evolve your product. Remember, product management, unlike project management, you have somebody to hand over to, right? After you complete the project. Product management is a marriage for life, right? As the saying goes, like, till death do us part. Okay, let's jump through each of the individual steps and elaborate on what it entails. So first, assess your state of the product lifecycle and your roadmap. So your typical roadmap will have these basic primary components: product vision, business objective, time frame, teams, and maybe a disclaimer. Now, each of these components has very important role and purpose. The vision provides the teams and all the cross-disciplinary teams, right, a shared goal, a direction, to make sure that everybody pull in the same direction, right? The business objective specifies the metrics. What does success look like? What are the lever we should push for? Right? Time frame, from the product management perspective, you need to think in terms of broad terms. Now, next, or later, right? In broad terms. And teams, right? Teams is about customer outcome. Everything we do in product management is about satisfying certain customer needs. So remember, it's not about outputs, it's about outcomes. So it's not about the durable, but the achieved effectiveness of what value you deliver to the customer. And of course, the disclaimer is basically to help you nip distraction in the bud, right? You can't afford to be distracted, and your team also. Okay, how do you do it then? How do you assess your product roadmap? Here is actually a checklist, right, that you can help you. This checklist establishes various 5 what I call points. First is the product strategy and opportunity. Here, you need to be able to answer questions like, what problem statement is your product trying to solve, right? And this has to be clearly spelled in your roadmap. What are the target market segment you're playing in? You can't possibly serve everybody. A product that serves everybody serves nobody, right? It can't satisfy everybody's needs. Then you also have to talk about how you make money, right? How does your product make money? Whether you like it or not, your stakeholder is going to ask you, right? Where is our ROI? How do we get positive outcome, right, in terms of business needs? Then you have the business objective. This will be basically your measures, what I call so-called KPI or metrics like revenue, right? Maybe customer, what I call a brand, or what I call customer engagement, customer experience. Then you have the voice of the customer. This will be how your roadmap reflect the value. What value is your product is going to deliver to the customer, and this will help you ensure your team focus on the right customer value that you want to deliver to your product. And of course, nothing is able to work unless you be able to prioritize, right? You need to have speed, and speed requires prioritization. So in the prioritization aspect, you need to make sure all the stakeholders understand how the priorities are arrived at, what are the various trade-offs, right? In Agile, we talk about negotiable, right? That's where prioritization comes in. You need to make difficult decisions to look at all the various aspects of the stakeholder needs and do the necessary trade-off to arrive at the effective, what I call approach to delivering your product effectively. Then finally, you have the process orchestrations. This will be basically how you're going to put together all these people that you're going to work with in a cohesive, what I call, environment where they can have understand certain process and procedure to follow to work together, right? And more importantly is also to how do you gather customer feedback, because your customer is also your stakeholder. And in the product management context, right, you need to be able to bring in your customer as part of your stakeholder to co-create your product in terms of future development, product extension, and feature what I call to be rolled out. Now, if any of the points here, right, is no, then as a product manager, your first step would be maybe you should conduct some kind of roadmap workshop, right? Bring in certain key holders to answer all these questions clearly so that you can move forward. Now, if everything is in place, then we can talk about the next step. Right? So the next step, in steps 2, we are talking about involving your stakeholder to collaborate and to co-create. So today's world in the product management aspect, right? Problems are multidisciplinary. You need everybody to come together to provide and co-create a solution. And that's where the power of mapping comes in, right? So Indy Yang is a software designer and an expert in design. She's also an author of various books. Yeah. So in one of her blogs, right, in an article, she actually quoted in terms of the power of mapping, how power of mapping actually helps for you to actually work with various multiple stakeholders. So this is what she said, right? I have invited executive to presentation 15 minutes earlier than other folks so that I can stand in front of the diagram on the wall and walk left to right, allow them to stand in front of the diagram on the wall and walk from left to right, asking me questions as they go. As I answer their question, I explain how it will be used to direct product design. This kind of walkthrough is quick, to the point, and stays in context of missed and future opportunities that executives usually focus on. Finally, many executives have told me that they have never before seen all this information collected so succinctly in one place. But if you were to try to reflect, right, traditionally what we do, how would we do things like this? Right? We go through some documentation. We go through a PowerPoint stack, right? But it's not as effective as actually mapping. Yeah? So then the next question is, what are the tools of mapping? There are many, right? You can have things like business model canvas, lean canvas, customer journey map, experience map, and many more. And this morning, my colleague Vicky has already talked about user experience as well, right? User experience design. So here's an example of a lean canvas. Now, the lean canvas is actually a variation of the business model canvas. It has the typical 9 boxes, right? The only difference is in the 4 areas. Instead of key partners, key activities, and key what I call resources, you have problem, solution, key metrics, and an unfair advantage. So this actually is very useful for people who are building products, right? Digital product in particular. So this is one method of mapping that can help you improve your collaborations, what I call across all the multiple stakeholders. Now, step 3 is think agile. Now, agile is not just about short cycle incrementally. I'm sure most of you have already got tired of this agile mantra. I'm not going to spend too much time on it, but basically you need to deliver value early and deliver frequently. And that includes things like DevOps, DevSecOps, that what I call my colleague Tzann will cover later on in part 2. Yeah? Okay, step 4, right? Continuous monitor, iterate, evolve your product. Remember, product management is a marriage in life, right? You don't have anybody to hand over to after your first release. You still have to look for the next release, the next feature, and how to sustain the product, including pivoting and having what I call coming up with product extensions. Yeah. So I share with you this good quote from what I call Alex Goyashev, right? He's the MD of Cisco Global Co-Innovation Center. So in product evolution, right, you need to be very innovative. You need to be able to differentiate yourself from the various other products and your competitors. Yeah. So how to cultivate innovation spirit, right? So this quote here goes like this: Innovation is at its best when it's a result of collaboration by inclusive, diverse, cross-functional teams that are empowered to make decisions and enact change. As a leader, your job is to create an environment where teams like this can emerge and succeed. So as a product manager, you are a leader. You're a leader of the product, right? And you have to create an environment where all the various diverse teams, whether it's marketing, sales, engineering, DevOps, UX experts, can come together and co-create the so-called product that can, what I call, wow or amaze the customer and bring value to the customer. Another quote we find very useful is this, again by Alex Goyashev, right? Ambiguity is a death sentence when it comes to innovation. There's a need to have focus and not over-ambitious goals. So what I translate this in the context of product management is this. Right? As a product manager, you may be thinking like, okay, we are in Agile, right? Agile embraces change, embraces ambiguity. I can change my mind anytime I like, right? But remember, we are now into digital product delivery. You have deadlines. You still have customer value to meet, okay? Your engineering team, your developers cannot be what I call given ambiguous directions or ambiguous instructions. The software coder, right, cannot say the code is if then maybe, right? There's no maybe. It must be if then what else? What's next? It has to be very specific before the code can be produced. So bear in mind that as product manager, you need to protect your teams, right, from all the ambiguity that happens in the world that is a given, that is cannot be controlled, but you need to make sure that it translates to something concrete, something specific that can be given to your team, your engineering team, to proceed with the development. So how do you do that, right? Again, we talk about power of mapping. This is also some kind of map. It's called opportunity solution tree. You have your objective, the outcome. Maybe in the next quarter, you want to increase your customer sign-up rate by 20%. You want to improve your customer experience, right? So these are the outcome. So what does it mean in terms of the team, right? So it will be what are the opportunities that can support this outcome, okay? So then you can create teams for your various what you call engineering teams, and then from there to co-create, right, using this kind of map to come up with all the possible solutions, and then conduct experiments to what works best, and iterate iteratively and improve along the way. Right? Sounds too easy, right? You're probably also right, yeah? It just sounds too easy. That's what Mike Tyson says. Everyone has a plan till they get punched in the mouth, right? So it's a very, what I call a violent statement, but that's how Mike Tyson says it, right? So it may sound too easy, then how do you go about doing it, right? We did another scan of the job portals last month, and we were looking at also competency of a product managers. And this is just a count of the about 90 over job competency from the LinkedIn alone, sample of the job postings. And I just run it through the what I call a word cloud engine. And this is what we get, right? From here, you can see the very high emphasis on communication skills. A product manager has to have very good communication skills, not just communicating with the customer, but also communicating with the team and with all the stakeholders, right? Your business owner, your management, and including also interpersonal skills. So how do you then, what I call, develop communication skills? How do you achieve it, right? So the key things is, how can the product manager be effective with so many stakeholders to communicate with and to manage so many diverse needs? The answer lies in shuttle diplomacy, right? So the word diplomacy comes from what I call, basically is about diplomats, right? Yeah, diplomats' role has one of the most trying role in managing stakeholders because they have very diverse stakeholder needs. So that's why subtle diplomacy is one of the key what I call tips or approach, right? You can consider, right, to manage all your diverse stakeholders. So where can you learn diplomacy from? Who is the best in diplomacy? You have to learn it from the politicians. And so which politician or an expert in diplomacy comes to mind? Okay, I'm sure you may be able to guess this person. Let me give you a hint, right? His first name is Donald. If everybody is thinking of Donald Trump, sorry, you got the wrong answer. Huh? It's actually Donald Rumsfeld. Donald Rumsfeld is a famous politician, right, with a very strong experience in politics. His whole life career, right, is in politician, is in politics, right? He's an ex-White House chief of staff, a congressman, a secretary of defense, an ambassador to NATO, a U.S. naval aviator. Just imagine the kind of role he plays is very complex and involve very diverse stakeholder needs. So I'm just going to share with you some tips, right, that he actually worked out, right, when he was just the White House chief of staff, and he need to actually help those people working in the White House, right, who has to support the president, to navigate the various minefields that involved in running the White House and supporting the president. So these are some of the rules that he actually came up with, right, to guide the White House staff. Yeah? So the first rule is, don't begin to think that you are the CEO, the president. Right? You are not. The Constitution provides for only one. So in the context of product management, sometimes you hear things like the product manager is the CEO. Sorry, the product manager is not the CEO. Right? He is not able to make certain decisions. In fact, a lot of decisions in product management, he has to actually consult people. So he's not the chief decision maker. Right? So he has to also listen to people like his business, management, the senior management, right? In terms of the business objective, the strategic objective. He has, even for people who are founders of new products, for example, founders of company, right? That will be people who are quite close to a CEO, but they still need to answer to investor, right? Investor going to ask him, how do this product make money for me? How do you make my investment worthwhile, right? So rule number one, don't think that you are the CEO. You need to be consultative. You need to be collaborative, right? That brings us to the next rule, right? Include others. As this rule, highlighted, a saying by Senator Pat Moynihan, stubborn opposition to proposals, right, often has no other basis than the complaining question, why wasn't I consulted? So you have to work across many stakeholders with diverse needs. How do you get everybody to pull in the same direction to agree on the hard trade-off that you need to do when it comes to digital product delivery? This is where you need to make sure you consult everybody and get everybody on the same page and include them in the discussion. Now, finally, the rule number 3, right? Think of dealing with Congress as a revolving door, right? You will be back to today's opponents for your help tomorrow. So the message I want to give to you is that as a product manager, you need to work across many different diverse teams, right? Each of them have their own specialties. Sales, marcom, engineering, UX engineer, DevOps, right? So you need to make sure that you work across all the team and maintain cordiality and amicability across all the teams, right? Never make enemies with the teams, right? Otherwise, your product will have a very difficult, life to make it to the market. Yeah. So stay cordial, right? So how do you, practice shuttle diplomacy, right? First thing is to try to engage your stakeholder individually to establish their needs and concerns, right? So one method, right, is called this, one approach is called, is modeled after this concept called GROW. Huh? GROW stands for goals, reality, options, and way forward. It's actually not unique. It's actually a coaching method that was developed and has its root in coaching, whereby a coach or a manager needs to coach the staff, right, to achieve certain work performance. So similarly, you can use this model, right, to help you engage your stakeholder and practice this shuttle diplomacy to get everybody on board, to make compromise, to get trade-offs so that we can achieve the common goal and the performance that the product needs to bring, right? So the goal itself will be, you need to, the first step, right, is goals, which you need to actually, try to, engage yourself in understanding what are we trying to accomplish in the next 1 month, next quarter, next 6 months, right? And then you try to empathize, right, with the next step, reality, what is on their plate now for each of the stakeholders. Right? and then co-create options, right? Come up with what are the all various compromises and trade-offs that you may have to what we call use, right? To ensure everybody is on the same page and able to pull in the same direction. And then from there, identify one step to take forward, right? To get moving, yeah? So again, we go back to mapping, right? The power of mapping. So this is a shutter diplomacy canvas. It provides you a template for you to use the growth model to so-called collect all these stakeholder needs and anxieties, right? To come out with a way to actually bring everybody on board. Yeah? So it's very useful, again, for you to manage all your diverse stakeholders. So with that, right, I kind of come to the end of part 1. I'm going to then pass on to Tzann, my colleague, to continue with part 2. But I'll be back here again for later part when we do the Q&A. Yeah, Tzann, all yours.
Thank you, Liong Choon. Good afternoon, everybody. For those of you who is expecting Richard, has been publicized in all the events material. He sent his apologies. He has some personal matters to attend to today. I'm the less handsome version of him. I'm Chang. So I hope to do justice to his deck. All right. So thanks, Liong Choon, to cover a little bit of the high-level process and also the various ways to engage the various stakeholders. So the part 2, we'll be basically talking about reality. Okay, what happens when the rubber meets the road? The rubber, as represented by the wheel, when it meets the road, there are many friction, heat is generated, but this is really in reality, right? Especially to most of us who are very familiar with operational support. Yeah. So how do we mitigate and work within reality? You either move forward with as many parties as possible, and what Liong Choon said earlier, do not make enemies of the people that you interact with, because you will circle back to them and you will have to work with them again. If there are many friction, then you will either be in a complete standstill. If not, then sometimes, occasionally, you will slide backwards. So let's hope in all our roles, we can move forward to have a good working relationship and also bring the product forward. Let's look at this model. For the next few minutes, I'm going to discuss the 3 bubbles: technology stack, or in short, tech stack, DevOps, and product support. The first 2 are primarily the domain of the engineering team and the architectural team. The third one, the product support, is primarily in the customer operations group. Product managers basically have to deal with all 3 aspects. And the key part of dealing with all these 3 is really the CIC. If you want to use the acronym, which stands for communication, on your left, integration, and collaboration. And we will walk through each of the bubbles in the next few slides. First, let us talk about technology stack. Let us use this example. There is lately in the news, especially in the US, TikTok, which is basically one of the fastest growing mobile product, where you basically do short videos and then you post. It has been in the news lately. You have not followed with the news. You know that there is now a president who is going to decree the sale of this business to a country business. I shall not name names, but you can read up. And we'll see whether he has actually had the power to actually mandate the sale to the business. Yeah? But definitely, this company, TikTok, has been in the news lately, and it is among those of us who have teenagers, either as kids or relatives, nieces. This is a very, very popular app. But we are not going to discuss that. We are digressing a little bit. But basically, what we want to cover here is that this is an example of the technology stack that they have been using. Starting from the top, where you look at they are using Amazon Web Services, or they can actually install it on premise in their server farm for their storage. And then you can see the list. They are using various products. And for payment, they use PayPal and Stripe in the middle, as you can see. So this forms a particular technology stack for this TikTok's technology architecture. Okay. Next, let us look at another example that is closer to home, and we can demonstrate this by a video.
Meet the Singapore Government Tech Stack, or SGTS for short. It's here to create a better experience across government digital services for John and his family, so he can complete tasks for his newborn using a single app. Here's how it makes their life easier. John's using the Moments of Life Families app. Within a couple of taps, he completes his to-do list. Ta-da! So, you might be curious, how exactly does SGTS make this a reality? To begin, different agencies can now easily communicate using the same digital language. There, a scalable system is used to build, run, and manage apps. Data is made shareable through a secure channel. John only needs to key everything once, without the need to do it again, and again, and again. Making an early version of an app becomes easier and faster. What would have taken years before can now be rolled out in months. Bugs are squashed and new features are pushed out quickly. John gets constant updates and knows that the service is always being improved. The system is able to tell what features John loves and what he doesn't love so much, so that the app and digital services we are building can continuously be a better version of itself. Add a secure login function here, a notification module over there, finishing touches, and voila! John has what he needs to make his life that much easier. The Moments of Life app is just one example of how the government has re-engineered digital services around citizens' needs, making a more secure, consistent, and seamless experience across government digital services, so that John can focus on more important things in his life, like his family.
Okay, so this is a demo video from Singapore Government Technology Agency. We thank their contribution to sharing. And I thought my takeaway from the video is that a few things. One is, whatever the technology stack is available, we must always start with the application and services to the user. In this case, they're showcasing the Moments of Life application that a person can use throughout a person's life phases, right? From birth, reporting births to registration of the child's education and so forth. Okay, so that's one. And the technology stack should be something that's hidden. It should provide the voila magic, right? Whenever it works together, and then it provide the features and functions for the users. And I think that's the key takeaway. Technology stack is not just there because it's the best product or whatever. It should be able to provide the features that is necessary to offer value and usage to the users and the customers. I think that's the key important part. Even though this is a technical subject, but the benefit to the users is always the more important. I was in service in the earlier part of my career, and at that time, the government technology stack is what you see right now at the top, right? Where the application, the infrastructure, and the data is all embedded in one. And then you have another, if you want to develop another application, you set up another server, another set of network, set of database. So this is the previous silo model, if I may use the word silo. Today, with the government technology stack, as you see now, is actually embedded. You look at a common infrastructure in the middle, and then you may access to various databases, but by now the databases should not be duplicated or should not be duplicated as much as possible. But the common infrastructure offers a common access to both the data as well as all the services related to the infrastructure, but it offers different applications, as you can see. Application A, 1, 2, and 3. So application 1 could be Moments of Life, right, as you see in the video. Application 2 could be your parking app, right? And a third app could be your SingPass mobile app. So all these applications are what will front the users, what the users will use. But at the back, there's a common infrastructure. And this is what the Singapore government technology stack is trying to achieve, right? To have a common backend infrastructure, whether it's data, whether it's servers, whether it's utility services, or whether it's network services. It is consolidated, it's well protected in a protected infrastructure, but the various services that consume this infrastructure, the various applications, can be discrete and can be targeted at different set of users. And I think that's, for me, is a key takeaway. yeah, when we talk about technology stack. So this is elaboration. Now that you have lunch, we can safely talk about hamburgers. So yes, thank you. So when we talk about technology stack, there's a front-end stack where these are services that are typically used and faced by the users. There's also a back-end stack that most of the architects, most of the infrastructure engineers and they will see, but not the end users. And obviously, we also have this emergence of full stack, right? Where you see the tallest hamburger, right? Where you put in all the various technology elements, the building blocks into one, so you can view them as one complete stack. So these are various ways to organize your technology stack. But the key message I want to emphasize again is how does all this being put together to deliver the best hamburger experience to the users, right, in terms of the application. And I think that's the important point. Okay, having quickly discussed tech stack, let us move on over to DevOps. And we would like to use the Amazon DevOps as a model. And I'll just click through the various aspects. Now, as you can see at the, in the middle top, all of us will build applications, we will test them, and then after we will release them to the customers on the right-hand side. And then after the customers, the users have started to use, then we will have to start doing the monitoring, get a feedback. And for example, there may be some fixes that we need to do. There may be new features that we need to incorporate based on the feedback. And we may actually put that into the product backlog so that at our next planning for our next releases, next few releases, we can incorporate all these features into the backlog. So what we are seeing is really, we are the whole entire organization within Amazon, and in fact, for any company, we should strive to be no longer working in silos, but it is a continuous development, and it's a common source code management, and it's continuously integrated. So when you just imagine on our mobile phone today, right, whether it's the iPhone or whether it's the Android phones, every time now and then you may see an app and you have to update the app. Can you imagine the amount of work that you have to do, right? From the moment you build and the moment you release, the amount of testing that you do. And all this cannot be done on a manual basis, and you pretty much need to automate the entire process. Hence the emergence of this phrase called DevOps, right? Which stands for from development to operations. And it is actually now an emerging area of activity in a lot of our development engineering space. And we do run a number of courses in this space. And if you're interested, please feel free to sign up. So this is a periodic table for those of us who are familiar with chemistry or physics. I can't remember which one, but these are just a snapshot of the various technology tools that are available. The link is there at the bottom if you want to explore them further. But the key point is, unlike the periodic table, which increases with new elements increasing maybe every 10, 20 years, maybe never, this chart, I bet you, will be constantly refreshed and increased and adjusted because technology is evolving very, very fast. Now let us move over to this thing called the security. I leave you to catch up on the cartoon. But most of the time, we do our development, then we hand over to operations. Then after that, we start to think, oh, maybe you should think about security, right? So in the many years ago, we always think about security as an afterthought, especially for those of us who are in the application space. Then we see the emergence of, after development, we start to input in security before you roll into operations production. But today, if we can take this idea of putting security front and center, that means even before we start development, before we even start thinking of how do we move our codes to production, we should be really thinking about how do we secure the entire infrastructure. Okay, and that's the key message to take away. Yeah, it must be embedded, it must be integrated throughout, not just in our processes, in our engineering processes, but also in our entire organization culture. Okay, next, let us move over to product support. Product support is not just, product support is just not just constantly headache because we need to take Panadol, as I think most of us who are in that space are familiar with. But whether you are selling a physical product like Panadol, a drug, or you are into the digital music as Spotify, product support is something that all of us must do. And it is where, as what Vicky said earlier when she discussed about customer service, is an important part of the customer and the user experience. Vicky shared earlier about her experience with CloudMed. So what if we say we use ClubMed to be the gold standard of our product support. Can we achieve that? It is not easy to do, and that's really where the reality hits, right? Because all of us, when we develop our products, we are developing in a way within our own organization. Occasionally, we will do testing, prototype with our users and customers, but it is really when we launch the product to the market where customers are using it, and that's where the experience will come into play very, very, very strictly, right? Very, very directly. I think I'll just skip this video. So most of the time, the product support people are not really talking in the same lingo, right, as our customers. And so, as I think Vicky has demonstrated that quite well earlier in her sharing. Okay, so we need to be able to put ourselves in the shoes of our customers when we engage with them, when we provide support to them. Okay? And this is the aspects. Sorry, these are the various aspects when we talk about customer support, right? It's about answering their questions. Sometimes the products may not work, so you have to resolve their problem. Most of the time it's actually over the network. And we also have to, on our end, we have to maximize the product features to be utilized. At the same time, we also want to take in new product features feedback so that we can include that into the next release, right, in our next roadmap. Okay? And the various channels to providing customer support, as you can see on the chart. In today's world, there are many, many different ways where customers can engage with us. It could be voice, telephone, internet, and more now, the engagement could well be through the app stores, right? Whether it's Apple Store or through the Android Play Store. Okay, so we must be ready and be prime. And that also means that our support people must be able to access to all these various channels and be able to provide a cohesive and a single voice to respond to the customer queries. So just to finish off, so the product support is really about end-to-end, right? From cradle to grave, if you can see from the top. So when we start planning for a product vision, we must already be planning how are we going to launch, how are we going to provide support. And I guess sooner or later, every product will come to an end of its useful life, and we also need to plan about how do we exit them from the market. Yeah, and it's useful for us to think about those things. And in particular, when we are coming towards the end of the product, when we are about to withdraw the product from the market, we must really think about how do we transit our customers, our existing users, to a new product, to another product, could well be our comparative product. So those are something that we actually need to plan, right? And we do discuss this in our various courses. Okay, I've come to the end of part 2. So some takeaways. Okay, we need to be agile. We need to look at product from cradle to grave, from start to the end. And in the end, the CIC plays a very part, right? We need to really communicate with all of our team members, our various teams. We need to integrate and we need to collaborate. Okay, so thank you very much. Okay, now may I invite Liong Choon back. We have some few minutes for our Q&A. Thank you.
Okay, sorry, I got my mic in the mute mode there. Okay, so we are now in question and answer time. Okay, let me check whether there's any question on the board here.
I think there's one on shuttle diplomacy.
Okay, shuttle diplomacy sounds, these questions, okay, let me just read out the question for the interest of benefit of all the others. Shuttle diplomacy sounds like a great idea, but we are often struggling to meet really tight schedules. How do we find the time to meet each different team, especially now when we are all working from home? Well, as what I call the little phrase, right? Practice. Yeah, I'm sure that definitely what I call we wouldn't think of working from home as a possible alternative, right? People always think that we need to meet each other, right? But this what I call pandemic has shown us that nothing is impossible. Yeah, so I understand definitely there are tight deadlines. In fact, what I call this is whereby the planning, right? If you fail to plan, you plan to fail, right? So at the planning level is very important, your roadmap. That's where you already start to establish all the processes and stakeholder engagement in place before you get into product delivery. Because that's where, as you say, right, there are actually operational deadlines, there are various other deadlines, right? And you need to synchronize all the deadlines across all the various stakeholders. So the key is to so-called try to what I call follow the 4 steps, and then ensure that you have proper, at each stage, right, you have a proper roadmap already in place and a proper process in place. How do you engage your stakeholder, right? How do you communicate, right? And the idea of maps, which I mentioned in my part 1, is a very effective tool to actually do this in a very, very succinct manner, right? Unlike what I call writing tons of documentation and doing tons of presentation. A single workshop can do wonders, yeah? So I would encourage you to try out some of these mapping techniques, right? To engage your stakeholder, to collaborate, right? The beauty of maps is that you encourage people to drop their various ranks, right? Instead of, and then work together as one, what I call a unified whole, right? That's what we talk about SG United now. Yeah. Okay, let's go on to, I hope that answers your question, yeah? Okay, there's this second question here. Negating stakeholder buy-in. What are the common major roadblocks, bottlenecks in digital product strategy? Well, that's why I like the what I call Donald Rumsfeld's, right, rules. Sometimes your stakeholder, right, the only thing they want is just to be consulted. They are not there to actually put in all sort of roadblocks, whatever, right? They just that they feel very what I call offended because they are not on the table, right? They are not even asked for their opinion. Actually, they have nothing against your proposal, against your idea or anything. Now, so you need to understand the stakeholder needs, and using that what I call this shuttle diplomat canvas, right? You can try to fill up, right? What are the various needs and how then you can strategize, right? To engage them. Ultimately, you still need to get all the stakeholders together, right? To agree on the trade-off, to agree on the compromises that you need to make, right? Ultimately, your engineering resources and other resources are limited. You don't have unlimited resources. This is just a fact of life. So you need to make what I call hard choices, trade-off, and that's where the product manager comes in, right? You have to marry up all the engineering team's needs, the stakeholder needs or the management needs, right, to come to a compromise and make hard trade-off. Okay, this next question. Can I say that software project management life cycle is a subset of project management life cycle?
No, I think he meant product management.
Product management. Well, I don't see as actually it's the other way around. If you are, in my opinion, actually it's the other way around. Very often a product, because a product is cradle to grave, there are a lot more issues you need to deal with, right? Beyond just the project itself. A project is a temporary endeavor, going by your PMP's, PMI's standard definition. For a product, it's not, right? You don't have somebody to hand over you, right? You have to continue, yeah? And what I call see through the product beyond the operation, beyond the first release. You have to think of the next release, and what about the support, the operation aspect of the project. Okay, I've been indicated that there's actually a shortage of time. We are actually unable to maybe what I call continue with all the questions, but just be assured, right, that we will continue to answer those questions maybe offline through other means, yeah? So I will now have to stop and then maybe thank you for all your attention. We'll see you in the next session, yeah?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.